Thanks for tuning into the For Those Made to Do podcast. We are your hosts, Mandy, Sahota,
and Bianca, Pavel. This podcast is all about the doers who have achieved career success in the UAE and the stories that go with it.
In this episode, we're sitting down with Ramez Helou and Samer Abou Daher, who are sharing a sales toolkit for the novice and the seasoned sales professional. Along with the storytelling and insights, we get to hear two different takes on the art of selling. The chat explores themes such as the principle of liking, the ideal customer profile, and the DNA of a good salesperson.
If you'd like to know how to turn your soft skills into cash, where 80% of the sale actually happens, and when to walk away from a client, then grab a cup of coffee, put your headphones on, and tune into this episode. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we have a full house here in our studio as we're joined by two guests to tackle, demystify, and why not, make you love sales. Selling is one of the oldest jobs in the world and arguably one that set the foundation for society as we know it today. We've seen many jobs come and go over time, but salespeople have always remained the engine of every thriving business. To understand what it takes to be good at this craft and why it is one of the most popular career paths here in the UAE, we've invited two experts who have mastered it for themselves. Welcome Ramez Helou, founder and CEO of the Academy for Sales, professor of sales and leadership at Holt, YouTuber and podcaster, and Samer Abou Daher, Director of People and Culture at Bidfood Middle East and former head of food service at Arla Foods, Heinz Africa and Middle East, and Fonterra. Welcome, guys. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thank you for having us.
Pleasure to have you.
So, for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with your work, could you start by telling us a little bit about you and where your passion for sales comes from? Ramez, I'll come to you first.
That's a loaded question, Mandy.
I know.
So when people ask me, what do I do for a living? I say I give salespeople hope. And people say, come on, Ramez, Professor, hope is not a strategy. I say, you're absolutely right. But no strategy can work unless you have hope in that strategy. And the way that I give salespeople hope is because I've been there, I've done that, and I've been able to basically demystify and put certain processes that actually give salespeople the roadmap to achieve the desired sales results that they want to achieve. And you can say, I didn't find the sales profession found me.
As it always does.
Yes.
I've been there as well.
Yes. So it goes back from when I moved from Lebanon to the US at age 17. 2 years later, I started selling knives door to door with an American direct sales company called Vector Marketing, and the product that I sold is called Cutco Cutlery. And little did I know that I would spend 15 years in that business. And it wasn't just selling the knives, but then I discovered the passion where, they used to say, well, if this guy from Lebanon doesn't speak very good English, doesn't know a lot of people, if he can sell knives, anyone can sell those knives. And my manager actually threw me in front of a crowd, other salespeople, and said, okay, give us your tips. And I remember after that first time I spoke, the next day, a young saleswoman comes and she says, Ramez, thank you so much for your tips. I made my first sale. I didn't want to embarrass the girl and look at the order. I thought she had sold the knife. She's like, no, look at the order. And she puts a paper in front of me. And she had actually sold more than $1,000 worth of knives. This one invoice represented the biggest sale I had ever seen. I hadn't even made a sale like that. So I was quite shocked. I looked at her. I said, what did you do? She looked back at me and she said, I did exactly what you told me to do yesterday in the meeting. And it was at that time that I had this warm feeling in my heart that got me addicted to sharing my ideas. And the more I started, you can say, explaining to others how I had achieved success, the more I started to build the ability to actually teach others the principles and laws of selling, which then allowed them to succeed. Then moved into management, started training and developing teams, and I did that for a period of time. And I would say it became the kind of like an obsession, a positive obsession. Why? Because at the end, my success did not depend only on my ability to sell, but it was also on my ability to actually make others better than me.
Amazing, and hopefully we can unpack some of that today. I'm definitely interested in hearing more, but you could for sure sound passionate about what you're doing, and it definitely comes across as well. Samer, I'd love to ask you the same question as well.
Yeah, so that would be difficult after Ramez's introduction. I don't know what
It's
to
hard
say
to
now.
follow.
I always say sales is not a job. It's not a department in a company, but to me, sales is a lifestyle. I'm super passionate about it. I studied actually hotel management in Beirut, where I come from. At that time, the dream was to become a hotelier. I like food, I like service, and being in a hospitality environment is something I liked. But then an opportunity came in 2003 when I came to Dubai. I joined a company in the food service industry. And when I say food service, I mean a company that supplies hotels and restaurants and coffee shops with food and beverage ingredients. As you know, almost 85% of what we consume in the UAE is unfortunately imported. So someone has to do this. It's people like us, the food service industry, and coming from the hospitality, from the inside of hotels and restaurants, it helped me understand the customers better and eventually improve my sales skills. In 2004, I met Professor Ramez, and we started our sales journey together in UAE, so I've learned a lot. And I always say, if I'm good, it's because of you, Ramez, and if I'm bad, it's because of you as well.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be lots more stories throughout the podcast, so I can't wait to hear those.
Yeah.
Now that you've told us where the passion comes from, we wanted to dive in a little bit. So would you say that sales is a skill, a universal skill? Are we all selling something, whether it's pitching at a startup competition, asking for a promotion, interviewing for a new job, or buying a new house? Are we all trying to sell something?
Absolutely. I mean, I would like to share a story. I mean, how I transformed my career from sales to what people say HR. We call it people and culture. So 18 years in pure sales. One day I got a call from my current CEO, and he said, Samer, I have an idea I would like to share with you. Let's have a quick meeting. And at that time, I wasn't working for the company. And I went to meet him, and he said, we would like to have you back in the company. This is a company that I worked for between 2003 and 2013. So I worked with them for 10 years. I left, went to Fonterra, Heinz, Arla Foods, and then they called me back. I said, but you have a head of sales. He said, no, we're looking at a new role, director of people and culture. And at that time I said, excuse me, director of what? I mean, I've never heard of people and culture. I know director of HR, but what is people and culture? He said, Samer, what have you been doing over the last 18 years as a sales professional? I said, I identify potential customers. I visit them. I ask them the right questions. We identify needs. And then we provide a service or a product that matches their need. And then nurture the relationship so they don't work for competitors and they continue buying from us. And he looked at me and he said, this is exactly what I want you to do as director of people and culture, but this time your customers are not hotels, are not chefs. Your customers are your internal customers, your colleagues. It struck me, and I signed the contract without even looking at my salary at that time. Luckily, it was a bit more than what I was getting before. And I returned back to the company, and for the first month and a half, I did nothing but stay interviews. And stay interview is the opposite of exit interviews. So you ask people, why are you working for your organization? If you're the CEO, what would you do? As your new colleague, director of people and culture, what advice would you give me? So basically, I listened 90% of the time, and I talked 10% of the time. And voila, after a month and a half, I have my people and culture strategy ready, done. Now, implementation time. And who set the strategy? It wasn't me. It wasn't the CEO. It was the people. So back to the question, I wouldn't have done this without my sales experience. And there are many skills that I picked up along the way, from questioning techniques to listening skills to body language, that come naturally to me today when I'm sitting with my colleagues. So I'm selling, but like an HR guy. I'm not selling product. I'm selling happiness. I'm selling learning and development. I'm selling retention for the company. I'm selling profit in the bottom line. So all because of sales.
I want to tackle the question from a different angle, and you talk about is selling a universal skill. And I tell you something, I cannot tell you the amount of people that I've interviewed and I worked with in my life that are allergic to the word selling. Oh, I am not a salesman. I'm not in sales. And people have this kind of this fear about selling. Yet when you come and dig deep into exactly what is selling, and what Samer has just mentioned is my philosophical definition after 30 years plus working in the profession of selling, comes down to one simple word: is to sell, is to be of service to someone. Again, what is service? Service, according to Ron Kaufman, is to proactively add value to another human being. Now, the word proactively adding value. So if I want to add value to someone, well, first I must do my research. I must understand what is it that they are going to value, understanding my profession, my industry, and then be able to show them opportunities proactively. So I must ask and uncover what we call hidden needs. So the thinking is whoever sells this product and service in here needs to understand, there is, marketing gets us in front of people, but it's the people that sell to people, right? So we're looking at connecting with someone at a I'm going to say emotional and a logical level. So people buy emotionally, they justify their decision logically.
So Ramez, just to come to you, because I know that you to a lot of people and you've been telling us about that a lot. And over the past 20 years, you've taught over 100,000 people how to be good at sales. Apart from the formula that people can learn, what are some of the traits that a good salesperson has?
This is a loaded question because a lot of companies are always in search of good salespeople. And they come to me asking me, Ramez, what is the DNA of the making of a great salesperson? So at heart, if we go back to the definition, to be able to listen and understand and put yourself in someone's shoes requires empathy. And that is the number one, I would say, prerequisite. The number one prerequisite in order for you to be a good salesperson is you have to be empathetic to really understand where the other person is coming from.
It's fascinating because one of my first jobs was in recruitment, which is quite a high-pressured, sales-driven environment. And the questions they were asking at the time is, are you money motivated? So empathy never really came into it. It was more like, do you have that drive? Like you said, it was a lifestyle. And I think the people who I saw who were the most successful in a recruitment environment were the ones that were live, breathing, the machine every day. For me, I feel like I was half in and half out. I feel like I am an empath. So I was able to develop a rapport. I was able to kind of connect with my clients and my candidates, but I didn't have that passion, right? It was kind of like, I didn't connect with it as much because I wasn't money motivated, but I was conditioned to think you have to be money motivated in order to be successful at sales. So it's really interesting that you're coming from it from a different perspective.
So Mandy, there is a balance, right? So empathy, the second quality or trait I was gonna say, you actually said it, drive. So the two traits that actually will differentiate top salespeople from the not so top salespeople, of course, you have empathy and you have drive. So the underlying element is then, well, how are they utilizing their empathy and drive? So a good sales professional is able to use their empathy to connect, their drive to keep pushing and really understanding the underlying reason of why somebody wants to do something, to then be able to help the person meet their goals. If I don't understand your objective, then I might not give you this machine. But if I understand what you want to do, the reason why you want to do it, then I might recommend certain things and you would appreciate things in return. And one of the biggest things that students have to realize, and this is, I believe it's a HALT research, it doesn't matter if you're graduated from an MIB program, an MBA program, what's the number one job they're going to get when they graduate? It's sales.
Business development.
It's either director level or VP level when you're an executive MBA. So it is the number one thing that people are looking for in this part of the world. Yeah. And I would even say globally, because at the end today, there is an element of AI coming, I know, but automation and AI and being able to kind of facilitate the process of the sale comes down to, at the end, if you have a complex solution, you need a human being to be able to go in and get the job done. If not, people ask me, hey, professor, will there be a need for salespeople with the rise of AI in the next 15 or 20 years? I don't know if you know about a site called willarobotreplacemyjob.com.
I've heard of it.
So if you put sales, There you're going to find two types of sales. There's something called technical sales and non-technical sales. So if you're in a non-technical sales job, well, I have some bad news for you, because 85% of that job role is going to be eradicated from existence. And if you think about it, have you bought things from Amazon before, or anywhere online? Did you talk with a person? So guess what? You don't need a salesperson if you're buying a non-technical thing where you can go read your own description and then make your own buying decision. But in the solutions that are out there, if you're selling, digital transformation, if you're selling medical tools, equipment, you're selling not equipment as much as technologies, innovation, the stuff is not going to be sold online. So here's where you have technical sales and you have non-technical sales.
I actually have a question for Samer next, and I think it ties in really nicely with what you were talking about. So when you're thinking about what a lot of companies are looking for when it comes to recruitment, you'll hear a lot of people looking for hard skills, so those STEM skills, so science, maths, coding, programming, everything that has to do with quantifiable kind of traits. And on the other side, we have what people call the soft skills, which are the more human-centric ones, which align really closely with sales. So these are empathy, listening, communication, and all the rest. And Samer, I know that you have a really great article about this, and I'm really interested to hear your perspective on it around how soft skills can be turned into cash and how they are, or why they are essential to a good salesperson alongside the so-called hard skills as well.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, first, I don't understand why do we call them soft skills.
Exactly,
because those soft skills are turned into hard cash. So in my opinion, those soft skills, I call them hard skills. So they're very important, not only to a salesperson, they are important for any person negotiating. They are life skills. I call them life skills. And building on what Ramez mentioned about empathy and drive, you'll be surprised how body language is very important. Yesterday, I was interviewing someone and he was sitting crossing his arms. So, I mean, this does not look good. It looks like you're closed. It looks like you're not interested. And many salespeople, they are pitching their product and not mirroring their customers. So mirroring is one of those skills. You mirror your customer. You don't say it with your arms closed. You open up, direct eye contact, a smile, a nod. Also summarizing. So when a customer is talking and then maybe after a few minutes, you take a moment to summarize or paraphrase. Now, why is this important? Because you're only telling your counterpart that I'm listening. These are all tactics, how to listen well. Emotional intelligence is very, very important. Understanding your own emotions. For example, when my palms are sweating, I know that my body is reacting to something. And this is when I need to take a moment and think, what triggered me? Is it something that the customer said? Shall I keep my emotions outside this conversation? These are all things that need practice and they need awareness. And they are life skills. You need them to negotiate any deal, to close any sales. Planning and preparation is also something people don't do.
Enough of.
Yeah. And believe it or not, but 80% of success in sales does not happen on the sales table. It happens in the planning and preparation. This is when emotions are not involved. You're in the office, you're planning, you're preparing for your meeting. Questioning techniques as well. So I always say talk 10%. Even within those 10%, maybe 8% should be questions and 2% should be statements. Because information is power. And when you ask an open-ended question, you're directly leading this meeting. And some people think that if I'm talking too much, I'm in control of the meeting, but that's wrong. If I ask too much, then I'm in control. Because if I want to talk about football now, I ask you a question about football. Then if I decided I want to change the topic to ballet, I ask you a question about ballet. And then who's leading now? Who's in control, me or you? So it's the person who's asking a question.
We're now seeing this convergence between big data, marketing, sales. So selling is not just about going in front of your client, exactly like you were saying, Samer, just going to your client and selling them your product or service. It's a lot about getting to know your client, their problem, their profile before you get there. And now we've managed to automate that because we're collecting a lot more data on consumers and on clients. A lot of our interactions happen online. A lot of our buying and decision making happen online. We get our information online, and that is data points stored and attached to our record. So arguably, marketing is much more informed by a customer's past decisions, and selling is much more informed by that as well. So how do you see the role of the salesperson transforming with this convergence between data analytics, marketing, and sales?
That's a great question. I would like to take this from a pure sales perspective, and I'm going to share with you an industry-specific example. So going back to my experience with the dairy industry, whether with Arla Foods or Fonterra. So the dairy industry is very volatile. It's a commodity business, like oil. So you have the price of milk globally changing every 2 weeks. Depends on farmers' availability of milk, depending on the weather. So prices are very, very volatile. But a restaurant or a hotel cannot change their menu prices every 2 weeks because it's printed. So suppliers supplying dairy products, they need to keep prices fixed for some time. Now, imagine you are a CEO of a dairy company and you sold, let's say, 100 tons of dairy products this year. And then price increase next year and you sell also 100 tons. But last year you got, let's say, $100 million. Now you have $110 million because of price increase. Is this growth? No, because you sold the same volume, the same metric tons, 100 metric tons, 100 metric tons. This is not growth. But from a revenue perspective, it looks like you have grown by 10%. So data analytics helped, for example, in this particular case, to identify that, no, we did not grow this year. We sold the same thing, probably at a higher revenue, but this is not growth. And you don't see that, because if you look at a P&L, you see that I've done 10% growth in terms of revenue. But when you dig deep, you see that this is not right.
So you always have to contextualize your data and understand what you're selling and to whom and in what quantity without making without looking at it blindly and making assumptions as to have we grown this year or not.
Exactly.
Correct. So then as a salesperson, you're going to have to really understand what the data is telling you about your customers and their behavior
100%.
with you.
And if you're a salesperson, you need financial acumen. You cannot be a professional salesperson if you don't know how to read your numbers. A professional salesperson should know his numbers exactly like he knows or she knows her name. If I wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I ask you what's your name, you know that. So what's your target? What's your LPC, line per customer, your ratios? In my opinion, this is very, very important for salespeople to be successful.
I'm going to add an angle. So this is looking at internal data and possibly some external data as well. The sales process has shifted because of a lot of the availability of knowledge and availability of resources online. So today, if a buyer wants to buy something, they have a plethora of information available. And where do you start, which is the most trustworthy information? So where do you go first, second, third? And one thing we know today, there is one common thread among people that are among buying organizations, and that is lack of time. Executives today do not have all the time in the world to do all the research that is currently available. So to gather all the data points, to analyze the data points, and to be able to kind of help them, right? So there is a model out there called the challenger sale. And the challenger sale has the premise where today, those sales professionals that are coming who are teaching me something new. So one of the most common questions in sales is, hey, what's keeping you awake at night? Research of the challenger says, you know what, buyers are sick and tired of this question. They don't want to hear a salesperson coming and asking them, hey, what keeps me awake at night? Because, you should be telling me what keeps me awake at night, because you're talking, you as a salesperson, the buyer is saying this, you're talking with 10, 15, 20 plus potential prospects every single week. That's over 80 to 100 every single month. That's more than 1,000. Man, you should know what are the things keeping my counterparts awake at night, and come and tell me. So maybe you can teach me something. So number one is sales professionals have to be able to utilize AI, utilize a lot of the tools out there to actually cut through the noise and come and teach something to this buyer that he or she doesn't know. So when they're teaching them certain things, they're actually adding value in the sales process. Today there are tools. You can put the name of a website on a certain AI tool, and it can study the website and come out and tell you that this, let's say, oil and gas company are most likely to have these 5 problems. So you don't even have to do the research. AI can spit it out. Now, of course, you then add to that potentially you being exposed to the industry, and you can bring in some real live examples. So today, I know when I work with a lot of organizations, I've done hundreds and hundreds of surveys. I know what are the top 3 things that keep companies awake at night. So the salesperson has to teach. Then I have to tailor my teaching to the audience. If I'm talking with a CFO, well, what's in it for him? If I'm talking with a CTO, what's in it for him? If I'm talking with an HR person, so I got to tailor my approach. And then in the process of teaching tailoring is I take control of the conversations. I take control. I guide the buying process for my clients.
No, I completely agree that the role of the salesperson is to educate and guide and offer a viable solution to a problem, rather than the other way around. I have this product in stock and I'm going to try to sell it to you.
Correct.
Now, I have a question for you both, which is, what do you do when your customer comes to you with some preconceptions about your brand, your product, even their problem? So we see so many people engaging with a brand before they buy. Somebody hears about your company, they will go online and they will check your website, they will check you on LinkedIn, they will check your reviews. Ideally, they will do a bit of that homework, right? Their research. And then they come to you and they think that they know some things about you. So your job is not only to teach, but in some cases, if what they know about you is not entirely accurate, then you have to undo some of that learning and you have to challenge them on some of their preconceptions. So how do you manage that carefully throughout this process, using your soft skills or your people skills and also some influence that we talked about before?
I love the word you have to challenge, because that's the concept of the challenger sale. And the challenger isn't to be arrogant. The challenger is to softly connect with people and educate them and politely let them know that maybe they don't have it perfectly right. I had a client that came to us beginning of the year, and they said, hey, which is your most popular course? We have about 60 key account managers we want to train. Just give us an estimate of, what it would be like for us to kind of put this in the budget. Now, it's an exercise that every single person would want to do, right? But I asked a few questions. I said, are you looking to simply train your people, or you actually want to see the results? He's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, you're asking about how much it costs to train them, but you're not asking about the better question, which is about this one other program that makes the investment in training your people actually worth it. And she goes, what is that? I said, it's not the training. It's who are they reporting to and how are they being coached? So do you have a coaching process? Do you have a coaching program? She's like, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm just interested. I just want you to give me the price of the other one. So this is where you got to pick your battle, Bianca. You got to, there's something called an ICP, an ideal customer profile, where I know exactly who are the people that appreciate the solutions that we offer and who are those that just simply want to look at a price. So people, at the end, you don't buy sales training because you want to grow sales by X amount. And just trying to think of how I got into this conversation, okay, is how do I challenge clients? I simply ask, well, who besides yourself would need to speak with that would actually understand, or that would be able to give us an input into the right solution for your organization? And she refused to get me to that other person. So when that happened, guess what? That's not an ideal customer profile.
Did you drop that
Absolutely.
client?
So she's wasting my time. She just wants to get a number to put on her quotation so that she can show her manager and put a budget. right? But there's no commitments. And she probably would do that with 3-4 other suppliers. And then she would go and then look at. So again, I was nice, I was courteous, and I simply declined. I said, if you cannot get me in front of that person, then probably we wouldn't quote you. She actually said to me, well, this is very rude of you. I said, excuse me? She's like, well, I'm the client. You should give me the quotation. I said, well, I would only give you the quotation, if you let me speak with the right people. So I give you the right quotation so that you would look good and I would look good. And we would both, we're partners in this. No, you should give me a quotation. I was like, well, thank you very much for your time. Have a great life, right? So again, people say customer is always right. Wrong. Customer is not always right. So there's about respect. And the respect comes on both sides. So the customer has to respect the seller has to respect the customer. It's not like, please buy from me. And, so again, this is a message where if I'm confident about my products, my solutions, and I understand, well, now this is, again, it's about being assertive, not aggressive. It's about being assertive. At the end, I'm only doing what's best for you, and then it's best for both of us, right?
Could I digress a little bit? Obviously, for, say, our master's programs, as students, sometimes come straight from bachelor's or they've got, one internship or one job's worth of experience before, and they go into a sales environment and it's very target-driven, it's very fast-paced, there's not much opportunity for you to do the research, sit down, kind of acquire information about your customers. In that instance, when they're in this fast cycle of numbers, targets, what's the best recipe for success for them in that type of sales environment? Because obviously we're talking a lot more around technical selling, consultative selling at a high level in a lot of instances where the kind of case value is quite high. In this kind of churn environment where some students will find themselves in, how can they have success in that environment where the pressure's on, the targets are high, and they have the aptitude for it, but the environment isn't conducive to real selling as we've discussed?
From a people and culture perspective, this is a shared responsibility between the individual and the organization. You have to slow down, especially in your induction orientation phase. If you're a new MBA graduate, you step into a new organization, you need to take your time to understand what industry are you in. Ramez mentioned it before, the PICS and product, industry, competition, and then sales. So you need to know your industry, you need to know your competitors. I mean, they say keep your friends close, but your enemy closer, or your competitors closer. You need to understand or to study your competitors very well. And again, it's a shared responsibility. Your manager, your people and culture departments, your organization should enable you. To me, this is leadership. I mean, leadership is to enable your employee to give their best. Do not set them for failure. Do not send them to customers without really understanding their industry. So slow down, take your time, and be curious to learn.
Right. You mentioned, because obviously you guys have, both of you have a wealth of experience here in this region, and we wanted to touch on this a little bit as well. A lot of the companies that are here, they're quite lean teams, distribution teams, very kind of sales-led. That's the international brands and the homegrown ones as well. And in the first episode, when we were talking to Dean Martha, she mentioned about the importance of like personal branding and networking in this region. And I was hoping you guys could speak to that element of how that impacts your sales success in this region and how's best to navigate that as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing this up. So from my perspective as well, I use LinkedIn a lot to build not only personal branding, but employer branding.
Yeah.
And, this saved us a lot of money in recruitment fees. So in the past, we used to pay a lot of money for headhunters to find us the right people. And today it takes me just 2 minutes to post on LinkedIn the cultural events we do in our company, the conversations I have with my colleagues, promoting other unsung heroes in the company. And a lot of time during interviews, I ask people, so how did you know about this vacancy? Why did you apply to this particular role? They say, we follow you on LinkedIn and we see the great stuff you're doing to your organization. And we want to be part of this beautiful organization. So we don't work with headhunters. I'm sorry, headhunters, but we don't work with them anymore, not because they're not valuable, but because there is an influx of people approaching us. I really need another 24 hours in the day just to answer the messages I get on LinkedIn. And I'm seriously thinking of dedicating 1 hour of my time just to really answer, because as director of people and culture, I cannot ignore messages on LinkedIn. I'm the face of the company. And it's a great source of talent acquisition.
Absolutely.
So building personal branding, I get more followers, and building employer branding is something that adds equity and value to the company.
And how about that face-to-face element? Because a lot of people, if we use the term wasta and things like that, that concept of a lot of business gets done in person, face-to-face, go out there, go network. Like you mentioned, Ramez, that 20% of your day needs to be dedicated to, development and learning and networking. Someone starting out in their career, how do they best navigate that here in this region?
I do this a lot. I mean, we have like a small coffee shop within our premises, and my colleague Dominic, a great barista. So trust me, there's not a single week that goes by that I don't invite people for a cup of coffee. And believe it or not, many of them are HALT students. I participated with Professor Ramez in Influence and Persuasion, and I networked with colleagues here, and I invite them to come over to see our company, have a cup of coffee, show them around. It's very important to them and to me as well. This is a way to attract talents. We started something called the People and Culture Café. So every Friday between 3 and 4 p.m. before going home, enjoying my weekend instead of sitting and reading reports. So I invite one person from different departments, okay, a total of 5. We've created like game cards, generic questions, and we sit together, we invite them for a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and we network. Sometimes I invite guest speakers from outside, to inspire our colleagues. Sometimes we invite potential employees, future employees. So we call it the People and Culture Café. It just enhances our understanding of our people, of our guests. So I love that, and our colleagues are loving it as well.
Making space for this is almost unheard of. Hearing you speak of these types of initiatives is really quite amazing, because not every company puts the time and effort into this area, and I think it really does have a lot of impact and goes a long way, and I love to hear it.
And the best part is it costs you nothing. Zero investment, just a cup of coffee and an hour of your time, and it's the perfect way for me to wind up the week before going home and enjoying my weekend.
Samer has brought the element of this branding from a corporate perspective, and you can see this is beautiful, and what the actions and activities you're doing are giving visibility to your company brand, to your brand as the one leading this entire initiative. And if I can maybe direct the conversation towards, building on what you're saying, to actually say, well, if I'm a student, if I am somebody who's graduating and I'm listening to this, or if I've graduated and maybe I'm not as visible out there. I had a student of mine, her name is Abimbola from Nigeria. I can't remember her last name right now, but Abimbola was somebody that was one of the graduating class of MBA, the MBA class of 2000, maybe 14 or 15. And she couldn't find work for almost a year, and she's a fighter, and she found ways to keep herself in Dubai, right? And then we started talking, and then I started guiding and mentoring her. And at one point in time, there was a job fair at the university, and Abimbola came here, and I had encouraged her to go and to talk with people and to whatever. And then she called me up middle of the day, and she's like, "Professor, man, no one wants to give me anything." I said to her, Abimbola, wait, I think you got this wrong. She's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, they don't have to give you anything. The question is, what are you giving them?"
Yes. This is gold, by the way. I love it.
And she said,
Should be a career advisor.
Yeah. and then wait, the story is coming. This is a live story. Today, Abimbola is very successful in one of the biggest shipping organizations in the world. And I think she's in Amsterdam last time I checked with her. And she's like, "Well, what do you mean? What am I giving?" I said, "Abimbola, you have something that they don't and they need. And she's like, what is that? I said, man, your brain, your database. You know so many other graduates that you can connect recruiters with. Don't go in and say, this is my CV, because everyone is doing that. Why don't you go in and the next booth, when you say, hey, I'd like to learn more about the role you're offering, understand the ideal candidate. See, I graduated here 1 year or so ago. I have a lot of people. I graduated with another, 100 and plus individuals. I might actually know the person that you're looking for. Now, I got a call back from her. And she's like, you won't believe what happened. She goes, next booth, the exact next booth, she went and she did exactly that. The VP of whatever was there, and he's like, excuse me? What? Okay, can you please come with me? And he went and had a 45-minute conversation with Abimbola, talking to her about this one person. And she's like, at the end of that person, I could think exactly of that person that I want to introduce them to. So the role involved required somebody that had experience in the oil and gas, has an operation management background, who's able to organize, prioritize, That wasn't her. But there was somebody by the name of Barbara. And she's like, let me make a phone call to my friend Barbara to see if she is looking forward, because I think she'd be exactly who you're looking for. Long story short, she called Barbara. Barbara said, yeah, I'd love to talk. And he spoke with her. And then there was a meeting that happened. And then I said, now that you have this guy's phone, now you give him a call, see how did Barbara do? How was that interview with Barbara? And guess what? After that conversation, do you think he would be more willing, or he was more willing to help Abimbola network and help her meet? There is a law at action in here, a law of influence called the Law of Reciprocity. Most people want to take a job. They don't want to give value. So remember, if you give, thou shalt receive. Right? So what is it that you're giving? Giving your time, giving your resources, giving. So this is a big element of your personal brand. As a student listening to this, you got to think of yourself. Next time I leave a meeting, you ready? You have a chance to be networking with people in your groups.
So thank you, Ramez, for that insight. I think it shows that you cannot be transactional. And I love this metaphor of the harvest. So thank you for leaving that kind of profound thought with us and giving us some excellent stories to go with it. So we've drawn to a close to the conversation. We always like to finish off with a wildcard question. And we throw in a question like this that's a little bit out of the box for our listeners to think about and leave them with some food for thought. So I'll be asking the questions and you'll get to hear Samer and Ramez's response in the bonus episode. So I'll ask the question and we'll reconvene in the next episode. Mm-hmm. Sales is one of the oldest jobs in the world, and it has suffered many transformations over thousands of years. In the context of the megatrends that we've discussed today, do you think that any of these changes have had an adverse impact on selling? If you had the power to undo a trend of innovation, what would you take away and why? And we'll resume that in our bonus episode. So thank you guys for being here today. And we look forward to hearing your response. And we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you, Mandy. It was a great session. Thank you, Ramez, as well.
Yes,
it was
good to see you, Samer.
A very good podcast.
Get together again, yes.
And looking forward to host any health students who would like to catch up for a cup of coffee.
Absolutely, we'll be sending them your way. Don't
and
doubt that.
if you're inviting us, we'll come along as well.
Oh, absolutely.
If you have Arabic coffee, we were talking about it before, so yeah, something not too strong. We'll be there.
Superb.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon. Bye.